Alrighty, good morning, good evening, or good night, whenever you are, wherever you're at. So this is Koala. We're going to be doing an account review for free-to-play Champion 2700 of Season. Now before we start, Kotetsu, my guild, is looking for new members to progress in the game. Our mission overall is to help you grow. If you're interested, please contact either me or please email directly to the guild. We accept anyone. It doesn't matter what type of how far you are into the game. Like I said, our mission is to help you grow. Our mission is to help you do as you need. Anyways, before we start, let's go have a quick word from our sponsor. Okay then, now today it's an account review for 2700 champion. So let's first start off at the hero tab, and let's go look at through the fire heroes. So the first hero I have that is built with the highest combat score of them all is Milim Nirvana. So Milim is a collab unit of the fire mage from the Cancer Zodiac. She has an unusual ability of being able to go against stealth. Her entire idea is just to be there to kind of one-shot landies, or landies with guiding light, or one-shot anyone with guiding light, or anyone with innate stealth. Her strengths is that she has really high damage. She has really high. She's pretty fun mechanics. The only weakness is that she's kind of unreliable when it comes to surviving hits. Her damage kind of doesn't mean much if she just dies. Anyway, at the build we have Milim's on speed pen. She is her EE of choice right now is a crit chance EE with Dragon Sphere, so the additional one focus on an S3. This EE, for new players, this EE cannot be attained unless the slime, time I was reincarnated as a slime collab comes back again. As this is a collab exclusive equipment. That's kind of anyways. So as you can see, it's a speed pen on Tiger Health Ancient Book. She has really high. I put her on really high attack. Her speed could probably be better. She has really high crit damage, 100% crit chance. So her entire idea is that I can soul burn S1, which gives an extra turn into another skill tree, which basically you can nuke any enemy in the team, especially Landy. So the goal here is just to nuke a Landy, and I usually don't ever really use her OTA anymore. She's kind of too easy to counter. It's much easier to play here in Guild Wars against Landies, especially Guiding Light Landies. Alright, next up is it's Mercedes. So this is powered up Mercedes. She's a mage of the Scorpio Zodiac. She is fire. As you can see, I built her kind of slow because she's more built for PvE. She's more built for Green Expedition. So she's speed, crit set just to make up for her crit chance. She has pretty high crit damage. Her attack is absolutely phenomenal. Her HP and defense are probably pretty subpar for PvP, but as a PvE unit, she hits like a truck. So her artifact of choice is obviously Magic for Friends. There's no other artifact you really want if you have this artifact, since it's exclusive for Mercedes. Otherwise, yeah, she's sometimes a pocket pick for OTA or for Guild Wars because of her really high nuke damage that I can do. I can basically annihilate teams with her, but otherwise it's pretty rare. Alright, next up is Shuna. So Shuna is a Fire Soul Weaver of the Gemini Zodiac. I can see she has really high effect resistance. She's on a speed resist set with the EE of choice being Sleeping Spell, Like Milim, she's a collab unit. As a result, this exclusive equipment is locked behind the collab, so whenever it comes around, you can get it. Her auto effect of choice right now is Soul Constellation, which increases her effect resistance by additional 32%, and it also grants her increased combat readiness. So the thing that Koala built when it comes to building a unit like this is that Koala wanted to build a unit here who didn't really have high effectiveness to land the sleep onto skill 3, but what it matters is that Koala wants the effect resistance to be really high. So the entire idea is that she's supposed to be this really tricky unit to stop. So I want the idea is that she counters Sea Lilies with her Soul Constellation. She counters a lot of other units with her Soul Constellation. Her entire idea is that she can Soul Constellation, she can Seal Push herself, she can either cleanse the team if I wanted to, or she can sleep the entire enemy team by cutting it in line with Soul Constellation. Alright, next up we have Adventurer Ross. So Adventurer Ross is kind of like not really built. He used to be built, but his entire gimmick got taken out by other tanks that we'll see in the future. So Adventurer Ross is a Knight of the Libero Zodiac. He's a base 3-star, and he is the this is the second awake. This is the specialty changer for him once you complete, I think, episode 2 or episode 3. So his entire idea here is that he's built on really high HP, really high defense, decent defense, some speed and some effectiveness with some effect resistance. So the entire idea for him is that he has a Soul Burn S2 that allows him to continuously Soul Burn to get a dual attack with the highest attack unit into a defense break. So his usage nowadays has kind of dropped in OTA. There isn't really much reason to bring a unit like A-Ross because he doesn't really provide as much safety as you would like. But that's just how it works. Next up, Mascot Hazel. So this Mascot Hazel is the Fire Rift Mascot Hazel. She's built on really high effect resistance. At least 220 is needed to survive in Rift. Her artifact of choice is Idol's Cheer, and that's just to keep up the seal pushing on Rift, and her entire gimmick is that she's this unit for Fire Rift who can give attack buff to everyone. She can tank the increased turn cooldown with the really high effect resistance, and otherwise she's just mostly a PvE unit at this point. The same goes for Tamrin, who's also another Soul Reaver. She's decently fast at 216. She's 4 speed HP set on Mega Hell's Tome. So the entire idea here is that you can skill 3 into an immediate skill 2 basically with the 50% CO push she gives on herself on the skill 3 idol form, and then the 30% because the idol form is a non-attack skill. So she CO pushes herself by 80% at the initial start, basically allowing her to cycle really fast. Her effect resistance is pretty low. Her effectiveness is decent. This is enough effectiveness to deal with some other mobs or some other bosses to strip away the buffs, because her skill 1 can strip away buffs while Idol's form. Her HP is okay, her defense is pretty high, so she's actually pretty tanky and she can survive big hits. Alright, next we're going to skip Elfo because Elfo isn't really built. Politis. So this is my Politis. Politis is a Mage Gemini. She is on a degen build. So a degen build means she's pretty slow. She has really high effect resistance. She has really high bulk stats, and she's usually played with Abyssal Crown. So this team, as you can see, she has high defense, high HP. She has really high effect resistance and really decent effectiveness and pretty moderate speed. Her artifact of choice is Abyssal Crown. The idea is that you can skill 2 when an opponent uses a non-attack skill. The skill 2 will activate and will give you a chance to stun right after skill 2 happens. So this can ruin a lot of cleat comps. This can ruin a lot of aggro comps, especially if they use non-attack skills into Politis. In addition, her basic skill here of being able to reduce 50% CO push is already innately strong, especially against cleave. So the idea here is that you can basically punish these cleavers with your really high effect resistant Politis, which is really hard for these cleavers to take out unless they soul burn like ignore effect res, basically making her really sticky. So counter set here is also to apply Abyssal Crown and to apply her skill 1, which has a chance of stunning. So it can actually change games because she can stun in a very important unit, basically ruining the combos. Resistance obvious is for the effect resistance, and it keeps her alive or keeps her from being stunned, which basically negates her skill 2 overall. Next we have Edward Elric. So Edward Elric here is he's on injury set with pen offset. He has decent HP, really kind of low defense. He has pretty good crit chance and crit damage and relatively okay speed. His artifact of choice right now is Golden Rose, and that's just because you really need the healing on like when he's below 50% HP. You can play Sigurd Scythe, that's an additional bit. So Edward here's gimmick is to basically play both roles of anti-cleave a little bit due to his skill 2 negating all types of his skill 2 basically saying like if he gets debuffed and he gets hit, he can cleanse that set. He can cleanse one debuff and then launch a complete AoE which deals a lot of debuffs. So these random debuffs here could be really strong. So like decreased hit chance, provoke, and silence is really strong. Decreased attack is kind of okay depending on who you hit, and restrict is relatively okay depending on who you hit. So the injury set here, the injury pen set here is to deal with really high HP units, so like Dorkovis, Lila's, Leafs, but Leafs is kind of an awkward situation because it's fire versus ice relationship. But against like Lila, he can kind of single-handedly injure her enough to the point where Lila doesn't really do much with her skill 3, and all Lila will provide is just a skill 1 dual attack and a skill 2 cooldown reduction plus CO pushing. Next up we have, the last one we have for fire is Charlotte. So this is a Charlotte built from a long time ago. So Charlotte is a knight of the Leo Zodiac. She's an attack scaling knight, meaning she scales off of attack and surprisingly not HP or defense. She doesn't need crit chance at all because every time she's buffed, anytime she hits, she will always crit. So the entire idea is that you don't really need to build crit chance. You build as much crit damage as possible. You build some speed, some HP. You build bulk and a pretty good amount of attack. Her EE of choice right here is skill 2, the EE, which increases her combat readiness when attacked. So this is a really good cycling EE, especially against certain units who do really tiny damage, but they AoE a lot. So it allows her to basically kind of push herself up really fast, up the chain, just to get the crit and to do more damage. Her artifact of choice is Mature Sunglasses. It basically increases her crit damage by an additional amount, and it decreases her damage suffered by a bit. So this gives Charlotte a little bit more survivability, which is probably needed, usually because she's kind of easy to take out, due to her fact that she's innately attack scaling, and she has no innate defenses, unless you count the defense buff she gets on her skill 2. Once this defense buff is removed, she kind of has no resistance, she kind of has no damage reduction, so she's kind of easy to take out. In terms of build, her build is Lifesteal Immunity. Lifesteal Immunity is because she really needs the healing on the skill 3 in order to play like the long game. Immunity set here is just helpful to keep her away from getting debuffed from units like Pirate Captain Flan or Flan, or even like units like Lua. If you play her with a barrier set ally, it will basically make her really annoying to take out or to resist, right? Anyways, moving on, we got the ice units. So the first ice unit of the highest the highest power is Kisei. So this is a Guild War Kisei. She's on really high attack, pretty moderately low speed, but this is enough for Aemon to CO push her. Really high crit chance, really enough crit damage where a crit damage buff will give her almost max crit damage. So she is her EE of choice right here is the skill 3 EE. That's kind of like, you can probably go skill 2 EE if you really want more damage, but skill 3 EE is just nice with the 1 turn decrease on the buff, so it helps you try to one shot. The speed is pretty nice too. It allows her to be a little bit faster and allow your gear to be a bit easier. Her choice of artifact is Portrait of Saviors. This is just because since this is a Guild War Kisei with on the idea of playing A-mid Kisei cleave, that opponents would most likely always be above 50% HP, so the 20% damage increase from Kisei would basically just nuke the entire enemy team with both the skill 3 into the skill 2. Otherwise, her set of choice is Speed Pen. Penetration set here can be either considered to be, you can try Taunt, but Koala believes it's much better to play Penetration, because Penetration works really well with the skill 3, which allows you to basically nuke an enemy before they can really do anything. But Taunt overall will probably be better because it will work for both her skill 3 and her skill 2. But even though the skill 3 already has innate penetration. Right, next up we have the 301 speed run. So this run is a speed contesting run, even though it's pretty slow. The run is on the run artifact of choice is RNL, so Rihanna and Luciella. Rihanna and Luciella allows him to grant himself an extra turn at the end of a turn. So basically the idea here is that at maximum potential, he can basically skill 2 into a skill 1, into a skill 3, into a skill 1, into another skill 1. So basically that's the same if RNL procs twice in his turn. So this once per turn activation means he can only do it once per turn, with the RNL turn not considering that extra turn. So this entire, for RNL, it allows Ron to basically kind of nuke an enemy if you get pretty lucky. Otherwise, some other options you can try is, Alexa's Basket, just if you want to get Gab, or you want to get increased crit chance. So you can see, he has decent attack, he has really high speed, his crit chance is probably slightly better. This is pretty low for crit chance. His crit damage is pretty decent. His effectiveness is not really important because this is a cleave run. His gear set is speed crit. He has one of the best speed gear that Koala could have. So he has like 22 speed gear, 19 speed gear. He has like 20 speed gear. He has pretty good stats overall. We're gonna skip Secret because Secret's PvE. Seaside Balloon is PvE. Luna is PvE. Okay, Karina. So Karina is this is a really like kind of a cooked build for Karina, since Koala doesn't have 2 rocket punches. But the entire idea here is that this Karina is on really high defense. His effect resistance is okay. It's enough to resist against certain against cleavers most of the time, since they usually don't build any effectiveness. Her effectiveness here is kind of useless. She doesn't really want effectiveness, even though it's nice to let the defense break. You're usually playing her against cleavers. Her speed here is pretty good. It's at almost 200, which allows her to basically cut those 300 units if she activates. So her artifact of choice is Noble Oath, because since Koala doesn't have another Rocket Punch, Noble Oath allows her to basically tank a lot of damage. So she takes a lot of damage, and since her defense is ramped up by a lot as her HP decreases, this defense here will scale by a lot. So when she actually gets to skill 3 initially, her skill 3 basically wipe a bunch of enemies. So it will do so much damage, it will basically one-shot a cleave Tom with Noble Oath. So her set of choice right now is speed defense set. The entire idea for speed set here is to play, is to allow her to be a little bit faster, a little bit easier to gear. Koala doesn't really like counter set, because counter set usually screws you over a lot, especially playing to like units like Lionheart Surmia, because it will activate Lionheart Surmia, which is kind of funny. The defense set is here just to increase your defense by a little bit more, just so you can get a little bit more value out of Noble Oath. So you can basically do a little bit more damage with the skill 3. Next up we have Dean. So this is Dean. Dean's a Soul Weaver, the Gemini Zodiac. She has really high ER. She has her stats are kind of all over the place. His crit chance and crit damage is kind of useless. Her speed's pretty good for a Soul Weaver, for this type of Soul Weaver, with 105 base speed. Her health is pretty decent. Her defense is pretty decent. Otherwise, the biggest part is her effect resistance is really high. Her exclusive equipment of choice is the skill 2 equipment, third one, which increases common units of our allies by 15% on the skill 2. So Dean innately does not have a CO push on the skill 2, so it's really helpful to get that EE for her, because the CO push could mean the difference between winning and losing in a fight, or it could mean the difference between cutting a unit or not cutting a unit. The other E's are not really important, like increasing her own combat minutes by a little bit, not really that amazing. And increasing the barrier strength on the S2 is really horrible because her barrier strength on the S2 already isn't that strong, so increasing it by a little bit is not really important. Artifact of choice here is Unfading Memories. There's other one that could work here, like Rod of Amaryllis, but effect resistance by 25% is pretty important. The heal in all allies is pretty nice. This is helpful if you think you're gonna play Dean into a lot of AoE, but overall for this artifact slot, you really want her to have a healing artifact because Dean has no innate healing. Meaning, if in a long fight, if you want to play Dean in a long fight, which she's built for, you need to build some type of healing. So you need to play like Outrider Amaryllis, you need to play Unfading Memories, etc. etc. Or you can play Golden Ice Crystals as you like. So I can see her set is Speed Resist. So Speed Resist is kind of common. It's probably the most common. It allows you to be really fast because Dean needs to be pretty fast in order to keep up her buffs. And then resist sets here because you want her to not be debuffed, especially stunned or controlled at all in any way. Next up, we got Leaf. So this Leaf is actually sometimes used in OTA, a lot of times used in Guild Wars. So Leaf is basically a faster version of its Orcorvus. So she's an Ice Warrior, the Orcoria Zodiac. You want her to build on really high HP. You want her to build really decently fast. And you want her to be just overall really annoying to take out. So as you can see, her stat line, she has really high HP at almost 27k. This is not including the artifact, which we will talk about later. Her effectiveness is 62%. This is just to help land her debuffs a little bit, especially her fast debuff into the restrict, because this allows her to do damage as if she did not have any damage redirection skills. So the frostbite allows her to do damage, ignoring like a tank or ignoring a damage sharing unit, basically allowing her to do true damage to someone over time. Artifact of choice is Prayer of Solitude. So Prayer of Solitude increases her HP by 7.5%. This increase of HP here is actually 7.5% of your max HP here. So in the end, with my build, her HP will probably be around like 28,000 bucks. She increases damage dealt by 7.5%, and then since her entire damage reliant is on her skill 1 and her urban stacks, her damage dealt increases by 7.5% and then by additional 7.5%. So she deals really massive damage with the Kraken, and that's the entire idea. So she's built on a speed HP set to bulk up her HP and to bulk up her speed. She's usually used in OTA or in Guild Wars against units like Lionheart Sirmia, against units who are really like bruisery with really decent defense but not really high HP. So if you think units like Lionheart Sirmia, units like Abyssal Euphine, units like Naval Captain Lanny, Leaf is a pretty good option in order to deal with them. However, she can't be first pit as she's really easy to control, she's really easy just to injure down and she's kind of useless. So overall, just be really careful when using her. But she can basically win games by herself. She can easily just kill anyone. Next up, we have Amid. So this is a decently fast Amid with speed resist set. So her entire gimmick here is that you want her to be really fast, around like probably 280, probably better than 265 here. Her effect resistance is pretty good at 150. This allows her to ignore certain enemies that have debuffs, or like anyone below 56%, because you don't want her to get controlled at all. Her entire gimmick here is that you want her to be pretty fast. You want her to skill 2 into skill 3, because her skill 2 allows her to CO push everyone. Her skill 3 allows her to increase attack and get Swift attack. So the idea is that she's really good with units who already innately get themselves 50% on the skill 3. So units like Kisei, units like Private Captain Flan, as they can take an immediate turn right after their skill 3 with the Swift attack, allowing them to basically take 2 turns in the price of 1. So over her automated choice, Fan of Light and Dark. This basically gives her since she was skill 2 into skill 3 anyways, this will increase combat miss at the highest attack by 15%, which is additional CO pushing, and it has a chance of getting crit damage. So at max stat, I believe this is 100% chance to get crit damage, or it might be 70%. But at that point, it'll allow basically when you play aiming with Kisei, it allows Kisei to basically nuke the enemy team if they have pretty poor mitigation, or if they don't really have any way to kind of kill Kisei outside of their turn. So no counters, stuff like that. If you can outspeed with aim at Kisei, you can basically nuke anyone in the game. Not really commonly used for OTA anymore, since OTA has really shifted away from this type of aggression, because aim is pretty easy to take out due to the fact that she uses 2 non-attack skills, meaning she straight up loses to units like Politis, and in addition she has kind of no cleansing, so it's really hard to kind of play her. And then the last thing I have to note for her is that she has basically no healing, so she's an aggressive Soul Reaver with no healing, meaning she's kind of like a one and done deal. If you don't really win in the first turn, she doesn't really do much, or she just sits there with 2 or 3 dead turns and just kind of like looks pretty. Next up is Shu. So this Shu is an anti-general Shu. She's a warrior Capricorn. She has really high, she has decent defense. She has really high HP. She has relatively okay speed. She has almost 100% crit chance if you have mass imprint. She has pretty good crit damage. She's on the counter pen set. Her EE of choice is the S1 Fush. So anytime she crits with S1, she has a chance of S2ing, which is activate Fush, which does a lot of damage. Her artifact of choice is Snow Crystal, which increases her critical hit resistance by additional 20%, and then also increases her CO push, her CO by 12% if she suffers a non-crit skill or non-crit hit. So her entire idea here is that she's built as an anti-general counter due to her team-wide crit resistance buff, and because it's playing fire into ice, so ice into fire, she can basically kind of S1 into a skill 2 into Genoa, activating him, and then basically Genoa would kind of like die in his next turn, as he basically it's really hard for him to hit Shu with all the crit resistance buff, and then with the additional her really high HP and her being ice. So Genoa will always have innate 50% miss chance, and then also has a 70-30% chance to hit on a crit. So that basically allows him to kind of be mostly useless. And then with the crit resistance buff to everyone, since Genoa doesn't really do much damage without a crit, it's much easier to play around it. Alright, the last one for PvE here, for Lua. This Lua is kind of slow. It's only really used as like a bait or as a pocket pick sometimes. So Lua is on really decent speed, 272 speed, with pretty decent effectiveness. Her HP is okay, her defense is okay, but this doesn't matter. What matters is her speed and her effectiveness. Her artifact of choice is of course Guiding Light. It gives herself at the start of turn, at the start of battle, and it has a chance of getting herself for an additional 2 turns at the end of her turn, which can be activated once every 2 turns. So her entire gimmick is that she can reset the team with her skill 2 to skill 3 combo, or you're playing against Beat-On, you can just rip a skill 3 innately. This basically allows you to kind of delay or hold an enemy team at the slowing you by a little bit amount, which is quite helpful. Overall, she isn't really used as much anymore. She's still used pretty often, especially in higher level of OTA, like where I play at. But it's just much harder because you have units like Lila who counter it, and you have units who don't really care about the reset, or you have units with really high effect resistance, like I showed you the Shuna with really high effect resistance, just to ignore this effectiveness, just to basically force Lua to either soul burn or not be able to reset a unit that you find is really important. Anyways, moving on to the Earth units. So Earth, the first one we have is Zahak. So Zahak here is a anti-Aiden, anti-evasion Zahak. So he has really high attack, decent HP to survive hits, really high speed, 50% crit chance because he already gives himself another 50% crit chance whenever he attacks, and crit damage is decent at 266. His artifact, his EE of choice is the S2E, which gives himself an attack buff, and the target. So the target is already given, but the self attack buff is not given. So this basically adds this second part. So when he can skill 2, grant someone else an attack buff and himself, and then he can skill 3 to doing massive damage. His artifact of choice is Symbol of Unity. That's just because this gives him the last 20% hit chance he needs in order to hit any evasion character, given that if there's no Fat Cat or if there's no Assassin Kotuja onto the field. Or else it just becomes an 80-20. So it's 80% chance of him hitting, a 20% chance of him missing. The damage dealt increase here is pretty nice. It allows him to do a little bit more damage to those evasion characters who usually are not built insanely bulky. So here we can see he's on speed pen. So Zahak has no innate penetration on any of his skills. So it's much better to play penetration on his skill 3 and his skill 1 since they're both single target skills. He's on the speed set with pen set. He has you want him to build him pretty fast, usually faster than the most evasion units, who are around like 240 at the max. Sometimes you'll see Aiden to like 300, but that's like pretty rare. Zahak here, his entire one job is just to one shot like one shot Aiden or one shot Violet or one shot Violet. Either or, the entire goal is to one shot an evasion unit. Next up, we have Falcon Akui. This is a very fast Falcon Akui. Given her recent buffs, allowed her S1 here to reduce resources gained by 40% when she S1s into a target. Resource reduction on this one cannot be ignored. It cannot be Fed resistance and ignores immunity. So i.e. you cannot stop it. It's unstoppable. So I can see this is the achievement rune. It's part of her specialty change. Otherwise, her gear wise, she is on a speed hit set. She has pretty decent HP, she has really decent defense, she has really high speed and really high effectiveness. So the entire gimmick is that you want her to be really fast, you want her to be able to shut down these people with focus or these people with fighting spirit with her S1, basically allowing her to kind of screw over a lot of units. She's especially nasty into units like Lionheart Sumia, who doesn't really have really good fighting spirit gain. So the entire idea is that you can Falcon Akui into Lionheart Sumia on the first turn, basically negating her skill 3 even if you dual attack, or even if you counter attack, since Lionheart cannot get enough fighting spirit to get the skill 3 off. Anyway, so artifact of choice is Bastion of Pollutia. This is a tech that's used to grant the caster and the ally in the back row with barrier and immunity. This is to play around units like Lua. This is just to basically protect the person in the back line, basically making it really hard to reset a lot of units with the immunity on the back line. So you're basically giving like a free extra set to the person in the back line with this set. However, it's kind of useless after a while for Falcon Akui, but it's innately strong for the first opening turn. Next up, we have Landy. So this is a kind of a PvE-ish Landy. Well, Koala is waiting for another Guiding Light here and probably try to rebuild this Landy to be faster. But this Landy has really high attack, really decent HP, really slow speed. This is actually insanely slow. Decent crit chance and really high crit damage. So her entire gimmick here is that she is an anti-buff unit. So whenever an opponent has a buff, per buff she gains 110 fighting spirit, and at 100 fighting spirit, she resets her skill 3 and activates a pretty massive skill 3 nuke. So the entire idea is that she's really good into those really buff reliant characters, but she's pretty awful into characters who have like a lot of buffs, or characters who really want to get hit, or teams who are probably innately tanky but don't really have much buffs. So in addition to her skill 3, also has something called a cannot trigger a counter attack, allowing her to basically play into Elvis without fear with her skill 3. So right now her artifact of choice is Bloodstone. This is a PvE build, so allowing her to just heal in addition to her skill 3 or her skill 1, which is pretty nice for healing in matches like and like PvE content, so like some bosses, like even Automaton Tower is pretty nice. Next up for PvP is Destina. So Destina here is built on really high, decent effect resistance. Destina already has 70% base effect resistance for the first 2 turns because of her special buff. She has pretty good HP. She has really high defense. This is insanely high defense. But she has relatively okay speed. Her speed could be better. But overall, she's on a speed HP set. You want her to be decently fast, you want her to be decently bulky, and you want her to have pretty high resistance. Overall, her EE of choice here is Real Sad Promise, so effect resistance, it's the skill 3. Increases karma minutes at the target by additional 20% when using regen. So her skill 2 has an innate 30% CO push, so it's better to usually go for this skill 2 buff over the second one, because it's usually inconsistent. So the third EE allows her to additional CO push by additional 20%, equaling a total of 50% CO push. This basically allows her to kind of take a turn and basically cut your opponent, because the 50% CO push is quite massive compared to any other unit, and allows it to. And if used on herself, it grants herself a 50% CO push, which allows her to cycle pretty fast. In a situation where you really need her to cycle really fast, or you need to cycle around her skill 3 in order to get the full cleanse. But artifact of choice is Shamaja Staff, since Koala does have another golden ice crystals. The effect resistance of all allies is increased by 20%, this includes herself, and then the effect resistance to healing received by all allies is 30%. This allows her to heal a lot more. So the idea is that you can skill 3 for a burst of healing, and then you can heal a lot more. Usually, Shamaja Staff is not as good on Destina compared to units like into another artifact like Golden Ice Crystals, since Golden Ice Crystals usually heal more, and this artifact is usually just better on someone like Maid Chloe, because Maid Chloe's benefit a lot from the effect resistance increase to everyone. Next up we have my favorite, Koala's favorite, Ocean Breeze Ludica. So Ocean Breeze Ludica and the Earth Soul Reaver Gemini Zodiac. She's built here on really high, decent HP, decent defense, but insanely high effect resistance. So compared to other summer Ludicas who built on like decent effect resistance with pretty good effectiveness, this is built on no effectiveness, really high effect resistance. The artifact of choice here is Golden Ice Crystals. So the Golden Ice Crystals increase your effect resistance by additional 15%, and then whenever an ally below 50% and take a hit, you auto heal them for 17%. So and this can occur of course once per turn. So the Ocean Breeze Ludica setup here is to be a tank down Ludica, tank down standard Ludica. So this is the generic Ludica for healing. She has really high effect resistance to basically ignore units like Sea Lilias, to basically get away with units like DDR and stuff like that. So she's really high. She has really high effect resistance, and she can easily turn the tables due to the fact that if you use her in cleave, the effectiveness doesn't really matter, because those opponents don't really have any effect resistance to begin with, and Koala also believes it's not really important to land these debuffs that she has on the skill 2, because there's no real point to debuff a Soul Reaver, because you're going to have to require a lot of effectiveness in the end. So there's no point to really rely on that, and any unit you want to silence anyways will get silenced by the skill 2 regardless. And because even at 0 effectiveness, because usually they are not built with any effect resistance at all. So as you can see, she's built on the speed resist set. This feeds into her idea of being kind of fast with pretty good bolt stats and really effect resistance. Overall, if you want to say, Koala used her a lot as a anchor of sorts, because her skill 3 provides defense buff and it provides a 20% healing with Ice Cream, which is really massive. So it allows her to basically tank like an LOK S3, or even if you really have to, tank a Lionheart Sylmia skill 3 for no damage for the first skill 3, which is pretty disgusting. Next up we have Lila. So Lila here is on pretty, I would say, like not really amazing HP. Her speed's really good. You want her at around 256 to 270. Her effect resistance is kind of like a dead stat. It's just a nice dump into it. Her set of choices, of course, speed into HP. There's no other set that's really better for her. You can probably try speed defense, but that's kind of awkward. You'd rather just go HP, or you can try speed resist. But unless you're playing a resistance Lila, there's no real point. So her bread and butter is her artifact. So the artifact increases her HP by 7.5%, which is similar to Leaf's Prayer of Solitude. But in addition, it has a Meteor Cowlick skill 3 passive, which basically decreases all debuff durations by 1 turn for a 75 to 100% chance. which can only be activated once every 3 turns. So this basically allows Lyda to absorb like a silence to basically become like a DDR. So her entire role here is to be a cleanser, as in like a combination of Meteor Cowick with Dark Corvus. Because her skill 3 is basically a Dark Corvus skill 3, it fully penetrates, it recovers HP, and it does a lot of damage. Her skill 2 is a full cleanse and a CO push. So in the end, she's really strong. Her entire gimmick is that she's really hard to control. So unless you can control her for 2 turns, this artifact can activate, basically negating that entire setup, allowing her to basically cleanse the entire enemy team, which is pretty. Being able to cleanse your entire team from a debuff like Aola, or from units like DDR, right? She can cleanse all of that off right at the start, which is pretty strong to shut down full-on control comps. In addition, her skill 3, being basically a Dark Corvus skill 3, allows her to kind of instant nuke someone, especially with a soul burn, allowing her to basically soul burn to instant nuke someone, basically taking off someone from the field, which is pretty nuts for a pretty slow and going character in a takedown comp. Next up, we have Midnight Gala. So Midnight Gala here is on really high attack. You don't want to build HP on her at all. She has pretty decent speed. She has really high crit damage and no effect resistance. So basically, this is a nuke Midnight Gala without the need for effect resistance. Her artifact of choice is Wind Rider, because you want the increased attack from it, and you also want the chance that if you kill someone, you do get the stealth, which increases your attack by 30% at the next turn. Right. Basically, the entire idea is that with Wind Rider, Midnight Gallus can skill 3, one-shot a really tanky unit like Lila, like a tank like Lost Rider Crow, sometimes Urban Shadow Shoe, and with that, you can one-shot someone, and that one-shot someone grants you the stealth, which allows you to do even more damage on the skill 1 because she does already innately high damage because she doesn't really want to be built with HP. So her set of choice, of course, has to be Speed Taunt. Her skill 3 already has 100% defense pen, proportional to the difference between max HP of the target and her. So the more HP there's the difference, the more defense pen it gets, up to I think a max 100% penetration at 16,000 HP difference. So this one is 24,000 or higher. She can 100% defense pen, and she will basically nuke almost anyone in the game. So this build here allows her to be kind of close to the first turn as possible while nuking the entire enemy team, and she can basically go into stealth into nuking another person, basically allowing her to kind of go for like 1 for 2, right, before she gets caught out. In addition, for Wind Rider, if she does kill on the skill 1 after the Wind Rider skill 3, she will go back into stealth and grant another 30% attack buff. So she can basically snowball a game if she keeps killing on and on and on. Alright, next up we have Lencia. So this Lencia is an injury Lencia on really high HP. Her defense is subpar. Her crit chance and crit damage is pretty high. She already has 100% crit chance because of this artifact, Full Metal Alchemist Chainmail, Full Metal's Automail, which gets an additional 10% crit. She's decently fast. She has really high HP, allowing her to basically keep up the injury because she scales off of HP. Her artifact of choice here is the skill 2 artifact, which increases the damage dealt by trample by 20%, which basically accounts for more injury. So she's primarily used only to deal with units that have really high HP pools or units that scale a lot of HP. So like when you play against let's say you play against a Dark Corvus, Lost Rider Crow, Lila comp, she's really disgusting because she can basically injure the entire enemy team over and over and over to the point where none of those three can really do anything, and they can basically just die one by one. In addition, if she lands a defense break on the skill 1, she will basically nuke that target, especially since they are defense broken for a lot of damage. Otherwise, her artifact of choice is of course Full Metal's Automail. This increases her crit chance by 10%. And anytime she gets an extra attack, she increases her crit damage by additional 8%, so she ramps up. And her speed increases by additional 8%, which also means she ramps up. So it allows her to be a little bit faster and do a little bit more damage the next time she hits. So the more and more she hits, the more and more she does. Alright, the next one we have is Rimuru. So this Rimuru build is a nuke Rimuru with decent HP and decent bulk. His defense is pretty awful. His HP is pretty good, his speed is okay, his crit chance and crit damage are pretty okay overall. The build here is to basically be on speed and immunity, and then the artifact of choice is Victorious Fly, because Victorious Fly recently got changed, which increases removes damage by 12%, and also decreases damage taken by 12%. I think it's 12 to 18%. So the entire idea is that Rimu basically has a no stack proof of valor at the initial game, with an additional 18% damage increase, which is similar to Simple Unity. So the entire idea here is that you can steal a buff, you can steal 3, which does a lot of damage with the crit, and when it crits, and it will do additional 10k true damage because it has elemental advantage and given that it hits. So it will do a lot of damage, and the immunity set here allows him to ignore a lot of debuffs overall. Alright, next up we have Yuha. So Yuha is a really funny Yuha. She is 30,000 HP with a counter HP set, with 16,000 defense, 30,000 HP. Her effect resistance is pretty low. Her effectiveness is pretty okay. But overall, she's pretty funny. She's rolling 30,000 HP just to flex. But overall, it's just because she's like a Crow. She's like Crow, where the low HP she has, the more damage her skill 3 does. So the entire idea is that you want to build as much HP as possible. You want to get her to like 1 HP at the best case scenario, and basically nuke the opponent for that much damage. Her artifact of choice is Aureus, because since you want her to be on pretty low HP, Aureus allows you to absorb the damage, decreasing her HP pool by a lot more. So she's on counter set here because she has 100% redirect provoke chance, which allows her to basically kind of control the opponent a little bit by pressing S1, which forces them to attack Yuha, which basically feeds into her HP, which feeds into her really high HP pool format. Next up, we have Arunka. So Arunka is a GVG only unit. Koala sometimes uses it in PvP in OT as a joke, and sometimes they win. So far, Koala has a 100% win rate, so take it as you will. So Arunka here is a really high attack. She cannot crit anyway, so crit damage and crit chance are useless. She has really high attack. You want her to be on decent bulk. You want her speed to be okay. You don't really care about effectiveness and resistance. Overall, it's just attack, HP, and bulk, and speed. There's just these 4 things. Her EE of choice is Eternal Red Heart. Usually, probably it's better to run the Shield 3 if you really think you can kill. The S2 is just for a snapshot. It's just funny to do more damage on the Shield 3 because it's hilarious and just to one-shot more. The Shield 3 here is probably better because it allows her to cycle a little bit faster with the Shield 3, allowing her to basically run down your opponent the more barriers they have. Her artifact of choice right now is Little Queen's Huge Crown. This increases the damage by additional 12.8%, and since you usually only want her to hit another person with a barrier, it grants her even more damage when she grants a barrier. So the entire idea is that she can keep cycling the skill 3 into a barrier, doing massive damage into even more damage, because she will just cycle on and on and on, because she'll just keep hitting barriers over and over. So she's really good into units like Specialty Change Orwell, Unbound Knight Orwell, because Orwell grants herself and all light units a barrier, given the fact that they have that rune active. If they do, Arunka can basically kind of nuke the entire enemy team, regardless of units, regardless of like something like Escort or Aureus. Because Arunka does so much damage, it doesn't matter if you have redirection, it doesn't matter if you have damage reduction, she'll still kill. Alright, lastly in this column, we have Sharoon. So this is a Sharoon that's built on counter set with HP set. She has decent HP, really high defense, really high effectiveness, and okay effect resistance. She's built to counter a one and done type of character. So like she's really good against units like not units like DDO. She's really good against characters like Meteor Kowik or Hand Guy. She's really good against Lila, because the entire idea is that Sharoon innately had a chance of getting a CO push based on how many buffs are on an opponent. So if like for the case of Meteor Kowik puts up a total of 8 buffs. So every time an opponent turn ends, you gain 40% chance to CO push due to Meteor Kowik. Since her skill 2 has a 2-turn her skill 3 had a 2-turn decrease. It would basically remove all of the immunity on Meteor Cowick, and then put Venom and Injury. In addition, since Meteor Cowick came in skill 3, you can skill 1 and if you align the Venom, you will increase the scroll cooldown by 1 per turn. Basically, kind of screwing over Meteor Cowick because he entirely relies on the skill 3 cooldown. The Venom is also really nice. It allows her to do pretty good damage into single target, into really high HP units. So it allows her to injure down systematic units like Lila, like Lost by the Crowd, like Hand Guy, who are all HP skills. Her EE of choice here is the skill 3 EE. This is the best EE of them all because it decreases cooldown on major pairs by 1 turn, allowing her to basically skill 3 into a skill 1 to another skill 1 into another skill 3. So her skill 3 comes up so quickly, it will basically overrun a Hand Guy's cleansing, because Hand Guy cleansing does not last long enough overall. And then over her artifact of choice is Celestine. Celestine is the best of them all because it helps with her healing. So Shun has no base in her healing, and since she likes to skill 1 a lot anyways, the single target attack will heal for 12%, allowing her to basically keep up the healing just innately. In addition, since Shun's on counter set, anytime she counters, it also heals as well. Alright, next up we have the lights. So the first light we have to talk about is Savior Arden. So Savior Arden is on a really high attack, no defense, really low HP, decent speed, a really high crit chance, and really high crit damage. Her entire gimmick here is that Koala wants her to be a nuker against a dark unit, so against units like Abyssal Eufiend, which is kind of hard, Urban Shadow Shu, which is pretty hard now. But she's really good against like Moonlight Bellona. She's really good against units like Apocalypse Ravi with her innate evasion. She's on a speed pen set. This is just to help with the fact that she already has innate penetration on her skill 3, but the penetration, they increase additional penetration since all her skills are single target except for her skill 2, counter attack. She can basically, with an attack rush, she can basically nuke any dark unit in the game. That's the entire idea. Artifact of choice is Sword of Cycling Seasons, her own exclusive artifact from episode 4. It increases her evasion by 20%, so Aiden already has 50% innate evasion, so this just gets to the last 20% like all other evasion units, so she has 70%. And she also gains 25% extra damage against dark units. So the entire idea is that against a dark unit, she does a massive amount of nuke. And she can basically absolutely obliterate any dark unit that isn't innately tanky. Just be careful though, she's pretty weak into units like Death Dealer Ray or anyone with Sleep, because Sleep will always grant a 100% chance of hitting a target, regardless of evasion. Next up, we have Unbound Knight Orwell. Unbound Knight Orwell here is on really high bulk stats, really high defense, pretty decent effect resistance, and pretty decent speed. Her entire gimmick is that she's on a speed resist set. She's supposed to be this tank that's kind of really hard to take out. And she's going to be this tank that absorbs all the damage and then she can also support with a stun and stuff. So the entire idea is that she has really high damage, really high overall break stats. Her effectiveness is you can argue to play high effectiveness to land a chance of a stun and a strip, but Koala prefers Orwell just being this tanky bruiser, or this tanky tank who just sits there and just absorbs the damage for the team before finally eventually dying. Her defensive choice is Adamant Shield. So Adamant Shield reduces crit damage received by all allies by 60%. Unbound Over already has something called Escort, which is basically an OAS. So Escort allows her to take 30% of all damage applied from an enemy, from an ally into herself. So basically, it's an OAS. So this basically builds the OAS to 30% damage reduction from OAS with the 60% damage reduction from crits, basically, and then on top of the fact that she has barrier and all that stuff, she's really hard to take out. She basically makes your team really insanely hard to take out, which is pretty insane. Anyways, next up we have Commander Pavo. So Commander Pavo is somewhat used in PvP, not really much anymore unless you're cleaving. So the entire gimmick here is that you need to crit with him. You need to crit twice in 2 turns in order to get Commander Pavo enough fighting spirit to basically skill 2 into a skill 3 nuke. So the entire idea is that he's basically a cleanup unit, and he can basically be helpful if you're playing a lot of crit units or a lot of units like Athletica, or you're playing units like Eligos, or you're playing units like even like Ron if you're on now just randomly. His build right now is Destro build with crit set. I think right now it's considered Destro with pen sets considered better, but his stat line is really hard to play around if you don't want to play crit. His build, you want to build really high damage. His speed needs to be actually pretty, it needs to be around this point. You cannot play no base speed, or his 50% CO push from skill 2 would not be enough to cut. You need to play him like 150, 160, 170 in order to make sure that he will cut your opponent when he's skill 2. You want him to build a 100% crit chance and as much crit damage as you possibly can. And you want to build as much attack as you possibly can, because the entire idea is just to nuke an opponent. So his artifact of choice right now, his second best one right now. His first one is Guiding Light. The second one to play, if you play like him, it's increases attack by 10%. Deus Noctis. So it increases his attack by a lot more, and every time someone makes a crit, increases attack by an additional 3.4%. So in this case, the more time you crit, the more damage he gets. So the entire idea is just since you're going to play crits anyways, this allows him to get more and more attack over time. Alright, next up, Spirit Eye Celine. So Spirit Eye Celine here is on a lifesteal pen set, because she needs penetration. Or you can probably put Torrent nowadays because she already has innate penetration. Otherwise, you want her to build on decent attack, no HP, as low HP as you can, but you want some HP so you can get one shot overall. Defense doesn't matter in this case. You want her to build on as much speed as possible and as much crit chance and crit damage as possible. So her entire gimmick is that when she takes a crit and she has her possession buff, she will skill 1 with a massive hit with defense penetration and even more defense penetration. And it would do pretty massive damage. So the entire idea is she's really good into teams that only crit. So like into teams like Abyssal Euphine, into teams like full Abyssal Euphine teams, into teams with into like Lionheart Sylmia, into teams with like I don't know, even like Rod teams if you somehow cut for some reason, or you're faster than him. That's unusual. Usually you would not play into Cleave. You usually only play into really slow comps like Abyssal Euphine, or you play into really slow comps like I don't know, even like Belian for some reason. So her skill, her artifact of choice is Dust Devil. So Dust Devil allows her to get an extra chance with a basic skill if the target survives. So this even worse on the counter. So the entire idea is that if you skill 1 with the powered up skill 1 and you hit and you don't kill, there's a 30% chance of doing it again. Basically, almost always nuking any opponent in the team, like regardless of the HP bar. Because regardless of how much HP they have or how much damage reduction, you can probably almost kill them, regardless of what time it is. Anyways, her speed, her set alright, Lifesteal Pen. You want Lifesteal because Lifesteal is really helpful here. Lifesteal allows her to sustain enough to basically anytime she counters, she will go from 50% HP to 100% HP, basically resetting her damage threshold, allowing her to basically keep up her own healing, so she doesn't just get outright wiped by 2 hits. Alright, next up we have Solitary the Snow. So Solitary the Snow here is on a really decent effectiveness with really high speed, with decent HP, decent defense, and pretty relatively low attack. You don't really want. This is not really a DPS Solitary. So Solitary here is on speed hit. So speed hit set allows her to kind of get the effectiveness and keep up the speed. So Solitary the Snow's entire gimmick is that she's an anti-focus unit. Anytime an opponent has too many focus units, you slam a Solitary the Snow, and they cannot gain any focus regardless of the game until she dies, or until she gets sealed or something like that. Her entire gimmick is that anytime she ends her turn, she gains stealth. So basically, making her even harder to knock out from the fight. And she also applies a lot of debuffs. So entire gimmick here, artifact of choice is Fairy Tale for a Nightmare. There's 2 artifacts you can choose here, Fairy Tale for a Nightmare, or you can do Abyssal Crown. So Fairy Tale for a Nightmare here basically allows her to do a little bit more damage than you usually should. So anytime she, since she always usually does an extra attack, she will always deal. She had to always have a chance to dispel one buff in addition to the buff she already dispels, and she would also do like almost 1.5k fits damage. This basically allows her to be really annoying. She allows her to be this unit who can strip everyone, and this unit who will slowly and surely chip your opponent one by one. As due to the fits damage, is this like 1.5k times 4 is around 6k. It's not laughable. This is a lot of damage over time. It takes time, but Solitaire Snow can win games, and if your opponent has really no reach for her, and you can just take down forever, because of her amount of debuffs she can land, because the amount of because of the AOE she can give out. Next up is Water Shuri. So Water Shuri here is an imprint Water Shuri, so it's usually only used for the speed imprint, and he's built up so he can one-shot a target. He has really high attack, he has pretty relatively low speed, really high crit chance, really high crit damage, and his entire idea is that you want him to be here, so so whenever you want to like speed race to someone, you want to be really sure you outspeed someone, you put him for the speed imprint, and then you speed imprint like your fastest unit, which grant some additional 10 speed, which allows you to probably outspeed your opponent. His artifact, his EE of choice is the CO2 EE, the Still No. The other EEs don't really mean much at all. Decreasing combat minutes on the skill 2 is pretty awful, because he already doesn't have any base effect resistance anyways, and because you're not going to play around him having skill 2, right? You're not going to play around him having just skill 2 in the game. His skill 3 has a finishing shot, the last one, skill 3, EE number 3, you can cool down a finishing shot by 1 turn is awful, because you're not going to play for the long game. He's a cleaver and cleaver only, meaning if you play long enough where he will get another finishing shot, you kind of messed up, or you really are not playing effectively. You should have just one-shot your opponent regardless of what time it is. So the skill null here it's best because it provides him a little bit of safety, especially when you get countered, or especially when you get hit. So it allows him to be really sticky, and it allows for him to not get one shot instantly, even when he skill 3s. Artifact of choice is Sachet Things. So Sachet allows him to get the summon readiness by 16% whenever an enemy is defeated. I think this only occurs once. So this only occurs one time per turn. So this will not. So even if you kill 2 people, you're not going to get 32% CO push. You only get 16, and this will only occurs on your team, and it only occurs when the enemy is defeated. So the entire idea for Sachet is that you give a speed buff you give a 10 speed lead to someone, to your speed lead. That first person will probably one-shot someone, right? And that one shot will give Water Shuri a 16% CO push in the whole team, and a 16% CO push will give Water Shuri a turn, and Water Shuri will get the skill 3 into a full pen skill 3 into a nuke, into basically one-shotting another target. So the entire idea is like he can basically cycle your team into another one-shot. That's the entire goal. Overall, he's pretty strong if you're playing into really high defense, because he already innately knows defense with the skill 3. And if you can do that, he can basically win your games by just one-shotting like a really important target. So one-shotting a target like, I don't know, Abyss or Euphane. One-shotting a target like I don't know, SCO where you can. Because full defense pen is pretty strong. Next up, we have Lost Rider Crow. So Lost Rider Crow here is a 26,000 HP Lost Rider Crow with 1.5k defense and pretty good effective resistance at almost 100. His entire gimmick is that he's a tank he's a tank and DPS hybrid. He can deal a lot of damage with his skill 3, because his skill 3 does a lot of damage already, and his skill 2 provides a bit of safety with his barrier when everyone takes an AoE, and it also decreases his cooldown of skill 3, which allows him to basically, if you play him to an AoE reliant comp, he can basically just keep spamming the skill 3 over and over and over again, dealing increasingly more damage as time goes on. So he himself can basically win games against people who play a lot of AoE counters or a lot of AoE in general. So against units like Belian, against units like Lone Crescent Bologna, these characters do a lot of AoE, and he can basically just keep up the pressure, and he can keep up the damage. Artifact wise, OES is pretty good on him. It allows him to act as that tank that you need to, so he can absorb the damage in place of a target. so it allows him to do to increase the defense, which is not really important, but he can receive the damage himself with all allies, allowing him to basically be that tank that you need. And if you want to, if you're in a situation where you can't play SCO well and you really need a tank that can do a lot of damage. The only issue for him is that he has no innate control, but other than that, he does a lot. He has a lot of damage, and he can basically be played in the situations where you need the damage, compared to SEO where you need the control. Set-wise speed immunity. Immunity sets here is just to make sure that he cannot be controlled by units like Flan or Pirate Captain Flan, basically putting him in such a situation where he's pretty safe against those units. And he's pretty safe against units who don't have any strip, but they have a lot of debuffs. So overall, that's why I chose on immunity here, just to be pretty annoying. Next up, we have Angel of Light Angelica. So Angel of Light Angelica here is on attack defense with HP. Here shows speed is pretty. The speed actually 242 is actually built. Is actually tech to be a little bit slower than most hand guys. Where most hand guys are usually 250, 260. Because the entire idea for Angel of Angelica is that you want her to be slower than like a Meteor Coward. So so Meteor Coward cannot skill 3 at all, or if Meteor Coward does skill 3, you can basically skill 3 to negate that skill 3. She has really high effectiveness. This effectiveness is really high in order to make sure that you land her debuffs, since her entire gimmick is that you have to land the debuffs. She is on a speed hit set. The speed hit set plays around her speed, so she can play a bit more bulky, a bit more defense, a bit more speed, and you play with a lot more effectiveness to keep up to basically make sure your Aola can keep on stripping and keep on being this nuisance. Artifact wise, Spirit Breath is one of the better artifacts for her. You can play Spirit Breath, you can play Book, you can play Book, Tiger Hell Ancient Book, you can play some other. Not really, you can't really play any other except for Tiger Held Angel Bolt or Spirit Breath. Spirit Breath is the chosen one here because it allows her anytime an opponent AoEs, her skill 2 will activate. Her skill 2 basically reduces it cleanses one buff and grants skill nodes to the whole team. With Spirit Breath, it will reduce the cooldown of this skill 3 by 1 turn. So basically, it allows with Spirit Breath, the more it activates, the faster you see, the faster this skill 3 will occur. And the faster skill 3 will occur, it can sometimes cut off your opponent because you just skill 3 them to silence them, basically negating their whole turn again because Spirit Breath activated. It basically surprises your opponent with really fast skill 3, which is her bread and butter. Next up, we have Conqueror Lilius. So Conqueror Lilius is she is on really high speed with decent HP, pretty relatively okay defense. Crit and crit damage doesn't matter, and effectiveness is her other stat that is pretty important. So she's on a speed hit set. This is just because, like before, you want her to be really fast, and you want her to have effectiveness. That's her entire gimmick, so that's why you play speed hit. There's no other reason for that. Next up, we have her artifact of choice, the Starting Music Box. This is probably considered her best in slot if you don't consider the Border Coin or you don't consider Circus Fantasia, but those are all for niche cases. The Starting Music Box is the best because it grants her defense, but it also grants a random buff to one random ally, including herself. So these buffs are already innately really strong, and since she already takes turns so quickly, the amount of buffs you can get is pretty high. So you can get Barrier, which is okay, increased defense, which is disgusting, immunity, which is really strong, and continuous healing, which is really strong. So when you get any of these buffs, it can basically make Conqueror Lilius a bit sticky, and it could make Conqueror Lilius kind of like this pseudo support with all her buffing, and in addition to her really fast base speed, with her really fast skill, she can basically grant vigor to the entire team, grant increased attack and defense. And since this grants an extra turn, the Starting Music Box will activate twice, giving her the chance of putting a lot of buffs on your team, basically making your opponent kind of like unable to do much with the buffs, or they have to strip it by that time. So you can get like defense buff on like someone like Abyssal Euphane, which is pretty disgusting. That means Abyssal Euphane will do a lot more damage. Immunity is really strong because sometimes your opponent will just get screwed over by the immunity because they just can't strip it, and it becomes a situation where this immunity is kind of keeping your team alive. And the continuous healing here is helpful because it makes sure that your opponent doesn't just die, or it makes sure that you can heal even after like a hit, right? So during your turn. Next up, we have Moon Bunny Domino. Moon Bunny Domino here is built on really high fit resistance, pretty decent speed, pretty decent HP, on a speed resist set. The entire idea is that she's basically like this average Soul Weaver who's there to counter extra turns. So units like DDR, units like Conquer Lydius, units like even Lionheart Silmir. All these units have not has extra turns. The extra turns allow her to basically put up basically cleanse your entire team, granting you a skill node, giving you immunity for 2 turns, basically allowing you to ruin a cleave comp, or basically even allowing you to basically ruin any type of damage for at least 1 turn. So the entire idea is that you can play around it. She's really good into like Knock Wall, because Knock Wall has the skill 3, and then the skill 3 causes it's an extra turn, which is allowing her to cleanse up all the binds, allowing her to basically reset your team if you're playing slow. So she's a really strong unit. In addition, her skill 3 also applies a CO push, so you can play her pretty fast. You can allow her to CO push your team to basically cut your opponent team. Like let's say it's a cleave, you can cut your opponent team and you can screw over your opponent over and over and over again, one by one. You can really mess with what they can do. Artifact wise, the artifact of choice here is Doctor's Bag. This gives her a better healing. Even though for beat-on she doesn't have very much healing. This healing here is kind of useless. We don't really. It's kind of like inconsistent since it lasts for 3 turns. The spell 1 debuff here is really strong. This allows you to get around those units like Conquer List, who if Conquer List only skill 2 and redirect provoke someone, you can dispel that redirect provoke in order to you make sure your team does not have any form of debuffs. So this allows her to basically play around those units or play around those people who purposely try not to play around who purposely try not to use an extra turn. You can basically dispel the debuff to stop those units, to stop those people from trying to control a unit with the thing. Next up, we have Magical Scarlet Doris. So Magical Scarlet Doris here is she's a GVG unit. She's PvP only for GVG really. She is a really strong light bait, so she's really strong bait for not really strong light bait. She's a really strong dark bait. She's really good at taking the damage from dark units, because you want to build a pretty good HP, pretty good defense, and she already innately takes 50% damage reduction from dark units. So when you're playing Guild Wars and you play against units like Dark Covis, you play units against like Apoc Ravi, you can basically slap her and they would always target her because she's a light unit. So the entire idea is that you want to play on a speed set with resist set. You want her to have decent resistance, you want her to have decent speed, and you want her to be playing on something like Water's Origin, because Water Origin recovers HP whenever she gets hit, and also increases combat readiness also increases her combat readiness, allowing her to cycle a little bit faster. So the entire gimmick is that she can beat units like Dorkovic, she can beat units like Violet, she can beat units like Apoc Ravi, because these units cannot really kill her often. The only issue is that you have to pay attention is you cannot use her against something like Urban Shadow Shoe. Because Urban Shadow Shoe does damage based on the injury, and you can injure Doors pretty quickly, it will mean that Urban Shadow Shoe will eventually one-shot Doors. It doesn't matter how tanky she is, she will get one-shot eventually, even with the damage reduction. Because damage reduction doesn't block against the extra procs. Overall, she's a pretty fun unit. Koala would recommend building her if you're really struggling against those dark units in GVG. She's in addition, she's also really good against Abyssal Euphine, because Abyssal Euphine, while trauma, cannot really kill her, even because of the damage reduction, even with all the damage increase and all that stuff. Next up, we have Lionheart Silmir. This is a standard Lionheart Silmir built with lifesteal and defense set in order to play like for a longer game. This Lionheart Silmir is not. There's 2 Lionheart Silmir builds nowadays. This build, which is the standard, and there's the cleave comp build, which is a destruction pen set on Golden Rose. So the entire idea here is that she has really high defense. She has pretty decent HP. Her speed's pretty okay for it. This is really good for a lifesteal set. Her crit chance and crit damage is pretty good, and her fed resistance, you don't really need it. Her entire idea is that she wants her to be really sticky. You want her to have as much HP and as much defense as possible to do a little bit more damage, and you want her to be pretty tanky so she doesn't really get taken out in a standing match. So the entire idea is that every time your opponent keeps doing something, or like with an extra attack or dual attack, she keeps activating and she keeps ramming damage into your opponent. And since she's so tanky, she's so hard to take out. Like, in order to play around this tankiness, her artifact of choice right now is Proof of Valor. So the Proof of Valor decreases damage taken by 24%, which decreases all the way up to 12%. At max size, it's 30 to 18. So what this means for Lionheart Simian is that Lionheart Simian is even harder to take down with Proof of Valor. And it means that when you play Lionheart, you can basically keep your opponent from basically one-shotting her outright, especially if you play mitigation. So the entire idea, she's supposed to be the sticky unit who's just healing with the lifesteal set, and then absolutely nuking your opponent team for punishing them for doing any form of extra dual attacks or counter attacks. Next up, we have Tempest Siren. So this Tempest Siren is a Lesser's Basket Tempest Siren on lifesteal on taunt. So this is basically a somewhat anti-cleave Tempest Siren. So what's Tempest Siren's entire gimmick is that when she gets hit and she's below 70% HP at the end of an enemy turn, she will grant stealth and grant herself a CO push, allowing you to sometimes cut out or cut a team or cut like a cleave team. So the entire gimmick is that she can skill 3, basically nuking a whole cleave team, or she can skill 3, silencing the whole cleave team, basically screwing up their cleave. Her set is lifesteal on taunt. This is just helpful to keep up her support, or to keep up her damage while making sure she doesn't just get instantly one shot. You can heal for more damage. You can heal the damage that you did on skill 3. Her EE of choice is the skill 2 EE. This increases the damage to the skill 2. Since you already have lifesteal set, there's no the spelling 1 buff doesn't really matter if you're using her only as a one shot against a unit against a cleave team. So the increased damage dealt allows her to just do even more damage, allowing her to basically screw over a cleave comp or one by one, right? Her artifact of choice here is a Lesser's Basket. So Lesser's Basket allows her to grant the coveted Gab greater attack buff. Since you get greater attack buff, crit chance is not really important here. If you get the greater attack buff on Tempest Siren, you can basically nuke a whole team because greater attack buff is so strong on her. You can basically do so much damage if she happens to get it. So it's all around. If you get the Lesser's Basket into your skill 3, she can basically just win the game on the spot because of her really high damage. Otherwise, you want to focus, make sure that her HP isn't that crazy high because she had a damage reduction passive. Her attack, you want her attack to be pretty decent, and you want her crit damage to be pretty decent overall. Next up, we have Crimson Omen. The Crimson Omen is a barrier. She's on a barrier immunity set. She has 2,000 defense with 20k HP. So this 20,000 HP here is actually a tech against Midnight Galileus. Because the entire idea is that since Midnight Galileus, as mentioned before, requires at least 16k HP difference to get a full defense pen, and because Midnight Galileus HP pool at minimum is around 7,000 HP, this would mean Crimson Omen would never ever get one shot by Midnight Galileus, meaning those people who rely on the Midnight Galileus to one shot Crimson Omen will actually get a nasty surprise. So she's on pretty decent speed. This 169 speed here, it's actually just a preference. Usually people play Crimson Omen a lot slower, but 169 speed is a preference in order to make sure that she's a little bit faster, in order to allow her to do stuff that she needs to do without fear of getting controlled or her being way too slow and she being absolutely freaking useless. Next up, we have effect resistance 129%. This is pretty decently high. This allows her to basically ignore certain units who have a lot of debuffs, or units like cleave units, because she can basically resist said debuff. Set wise, you want barrier immunity. Barrier is just her best set, and then immunity is also her second best set. And barrier set allows her to basically put barrier on everyone, and immunity set combines really well with that, meaning she cannot be reset by Lure, because Lure can only strip one buff on his skill 3, forcing Lure to have to skill 2 Crimson Omen just to strip off the barrier and the immunity set. So that's a really strong tech that allows her to keep up and allows her to be really, really sticky. In addition, her artifact of choice is Aureus. Increases defense of all allies by 10%, like before, and receives 20% damage suffered. Since she already has a 15% damage reduction on the CO2, Aureus is her best in slot. and it allows her to keep up the received damage suffered by all allies in their place, and it keeps her makes sure that she can basically absorb the damage because of her really high tank stats. And next up, we have Naval Captain Lady. So Naval Captain Lady is a really strong. She has really decent attack. She has really high HP. This is unusually high HP for a Naval Captain Lady. She has pretty decent defense. Her speed is pretty much base speed. There's no reason to play anywhere faster than base speed usually. Her crit chance is pretty high. Her crit chance is good. Her crit damage is really low because Koala played a crit chance deck. But otherwise, this is a pretty tanky Melanie who's there just to be really tanky and be really hard to knock out. Her set wise is of course counter set on HP set. This is just to boost up her HP a lot more. The counter set here is helpful because you already want to play her with a really slow base speed on the counter set. Since she can counter with her skill 1, the skill 1 when she counters with her skill 1, she has a 40% chance of activating her skill 1 extra hit, where it's an AoE damage, which is a lot of damage. So the entire idea is that you play counter on HP, and you play around her getting the skill 1 into the skill 1 extra hit, or called a salvo. Her artifact of choice is Elber's Ritual Sword. This is just to feed into the fact that you want her to keep countering. So you counter into salvo, counter into salvo. With Elber's Ritual Sword, it means your opponent can't just ignore her in order to do damage. It means that anytime your opponent hits someone, there's even a higher chance that Naval Captain Lady will keep countering over and over and over again. So if they AoE, it's almost always guaranteed that Naval Captain Lady will just keep countering, and over and on, and eventually Naval Captain Lady will whittle your team down one by one. Alright, last up for this set, Belian. So Belian is on a really decent attack. This attack is okay. I mean, she's not an attack scaler. Her defense is pretty moderate. Her HP is pretty high. Her speed is her speed is average. This is actually the expected speed. You play around no speed on her. Crit chance is pretty low. You want like 100% crit chance. Her crit damage is really high. Her effectiveness is okay. So the entire idea for her is you play counter on immunity. The chance on immunity set is just to play around the fact that she's an anti-cleaving unit. So playing counter allows her to basically destroy a bunch of the cleave comps if they activate her, or they activate her artifact of choice, Albert's Ritual Sword again. Like before, immunity set just allows her to be safe against units like Pirate Captain Flan or Flan, just to make it so she can't just get one shot straight out with a defense break. And so basically the entire idea for her is that if your opponent plays cleave and they don't ban her, and then she ends up Elber's Ritual Sword, or she ends up countering over and over again, she will just slowly and surely wipe your opponent's team. Because your opponent will take like 6,000, 7,000 damage out of like their 9,000 HP cleavers, and like after like so many counters, they will just die. There's nothing they can do about it, and they just get countered to death. That's the entire gimmick. So the entire gimmick too about Belian is that her skill 2 also does not provide souls, so she alone prevents your opponent from soul burning, or from soul burning units that do not have like a free soul burn initially. So she's really good against units like Moonlight Ludwig, against units like Zeo and Duran, because Zeo and Duran usually have Book, or Tiger Hell Ancient Book, which means you can basically get rid of that artifact. So her entire gimmick is that she can basically stop cleavers in the track and have them to rely on getting the combo done, or else they just lose because Belian will just counter it to death. Right. Alright, lastly, we have the dark units. So the dark units, the first one we have is Briar Witch Assyria. The Briar Witch Assyria is on pretty high attack, no defense, no HP. Speed is pretty decent. Crit chance is 100%, crit damage is almost 280, and effectiveness doesn't really matter. So this is a DPS Assyria. You want her on speed immunity. Immunity here is just an anti-lure tech again, because since she already has stealth and guiding light here, you can get guiding light, stealth, and then immunity set. But since guiding light comes first and then the immunity set comes second in the order, lure will not be able to reset her, because lure will strip off the stealth here, meaning Briar Witch will get nothing. I mean, Briar Witch will not get reset, and since Briar Witch will not get reset, she will get the skill 3 off, and she'll do pretty decent amount of damage, or at the very least she will defense break your opponent. So the entire idea for Briar Witch here is that she can defense break and she can prevent revives. So when you kill someone, when she's still alive, she prevents the revive of any enemy on the team. This includes and even allies. This includes This includes things like Destina skill 3, which can revive everyone. This includes War Honor skill 3, which can revive everyone on death. This includes things like Holy Sac. Holy Sacrifice, which revives someone on death. She prevents this. She's basically a walking extinction as long as she is alive. But once she is dead, any of those enemies that were not extinct, though they did not die from extinction, can be revived right at the point she's dead. Alright, next up, Orbital Villager. This is mostly a PvE Orbital Villager. He's only used from Unrecorded History 30 because you want so you build on pretty decent speed, pretty high attack. This is the stat line you could want in order to keep up, make sure that he can do enough damage to clear the little mobs of the per wave, and you want him to go first. That's just the entire idea. His artifact choice is a Prelude to a New Era. Basically, it's just Portrait of Saviors, but it's the event variant. It's the anniversary variant. That's it. It's literally just Portrait of Saviors. Alright, next up, Spectre Tenebria. So Spectre Tenebria here is on a Destro pen set. She needs probably a lot more attack. She has 100%. She has full max crit chance, full max crit damage. Her speed is pretty average for a Destro set. Her HP is pretty okay. Her defense is pretty okay too. So her entire gimmick for her is that she has her artifact choice is almost always Tiger Health Ancient Book. She wants the souls because her skill 1 soul burn is 20 souls and it grants herself in this return. So the entire idea is that you play Destro build on pen set and you basically go for a skill 1 to skill 3 nuke, and you can basically one-shot someone who is defense broken just straight out easily. That's just how Spectre Tenebria works. In addition, she's really good because she already has innate stealth regardless of on the field regardless of all time, and her skill 1 cannot be countered. So the entire idea is that she's going to be this really sticky unit who's probably most likely always dies fast. So when you put her behind a shield, like a unit like Unbound Knight Orwell, she cannot be. Unbound Knight Spectre Tenebria is really hard to take out because she cannot be targeted directly until the entire enemy team has died, or until your entire team, except for her, has died, or unless there's someone else who's stealth beside her, and it's just her and someone who's stealthed. Other than that, Spectre Tenebria is kind of just there, and she just hangs around in the back, and she does damage like a DPS. So she's just really safe DPS who doesn't really die. We have next is Strade. So this is a PvP Strade for a one-shot against really high HP. He has really high attack, almost 4.1k. His defense and HP don't really matter. His speed's pretty okay at 210. His crit chance is okay at 83%. Even though it's basically this is 98%. His crit damage is really high, and effectiveness doesn't really matter. But his entire gimmick is that you want to play on speed crit. You don't need penetration. You can probably play taunt on him. But the entire idea is that since he already has max penetration proportionate to the max HP of the target he's hitting, or no, he has defense pen proportional to the attack difference between him and the target, and it only targets the person with the highest HP on the opponent's side. So it's kind of a roundabout way of saying he will destroy the highest HP target on the opponent's side. So his artifact choice here is Azure Comet. The entire idea here is that you play Strade in order to one-shot a second high HP target. So let's say you one-shot someone, you CO push him with the attack buff. You like it was a hawk or something. You CO push him with the attack buff, then you kill a unit like Aiden or something. You get then in addition to that, you get the combat readiness push, and then you get to rip the skill 3 with Strate, and this will basically nuke the tank of the team. And slowly and surely you get a situation becomes a 4v2 with Zahak being invincible and Strate being invincible, and together they can basically just wipe the rest of the team because it's a 4v2. Okay, next up it's Zeo. So this is a somewhat cleaving Zeo. So this is a Zeo with 3,500 attack, so DPS Zeo, 257 speed, 50% crit chance because Zeo already has 50% crit chance when he skill 3s initially. So when he skill 3s initially, he grants himself a buff, which is called, I think it's called Deify. And the Deify buff grants himself 50% critical hit chance and reduces damage suffered by 50%. Right. So the entire thing is that now you don't really need 50% crit chance on him, and you build a pretty good amount of crit damage. His set is speed pen. You want him, since his skill 2 innately grants 20% CO push at the start of battle, and he's unreduced and he's unaffected by combat readiness and reduction. So he's unaffected by Politis skill 3 or Politis skill 2 and Abyssal Euphine skill 2. he can you want him to build on like 250 to 270 speed to make sure that he goes first. So with the 20% CO push, initially it means you want, if you can build him like around this speed, he can basically outspeed anyone in the game. There's no one who can outspeed him, except for units who have a lot of except for people who have really high speed, or people who have really high speed with speed imprints. Otherwise, forcing them to have to play speed imprints in order to counter Zeo's speed. Tiger Hell's Ancient Book is really nice because it grants him 20 souls, which allows, if you're playing Cleave, which allows you to soul burn into like a normal effect rates with a unit like Ron. Or if in the case of you're playing slower, it allows you to soul burn into another unit, allowing you to just keep up at least gives you the option to soul burn. Otherwise, his damage is pretty decent with the speed pen, because penetration allows him to do pretty high amount of damage, since the entire kit is all single target skills. Next up, we have Pirate Captain Fun. This Pirate Captain Fun is decent attack, decent defense, bulk is pretty low, speed is really high, and effectiveness is ridiculously high. So the entire goal for her, you want her to play on speed hit set, and you want her to be really fast, so she can bomb, she can rip a skill 3, putting a bomb and putting a burn on everyone, and she can get the 50% CO push for her skill 3, and then just before anyone can ever move again, she can skill 1 into exploding like a carry into a one shot. So her gimmick is that she's really fast here. She's so fast that she can probably be like almost second or third in the order, and she can push back the entire enemy team. And then she can, right before the enemy team can even take an action, she can take another turn to activate skill 1, which explodes a bomb, and which basically allows her to stun someone almost instantly, just for free. Her artifact of choice, which is really important, is Star of the Deep Sea, which is the Summertime Assyria's limited artifact. So it's a basically whenever since her skill 1 activates the bombs, so basically what happens with it is that Pirate Captain Fun cannot crit at all. She will skill 1, she will apply a bomb on an opponent, and since she applied the bomb from its artifact, at the end of the turn she will activate the bomb instantly stunning your opponent and doing a pretty massive amount of damage. So the entire gimmick is that she can basically she can control a single target basically forever. If you're faster than that target, there's nothing you can do. You can just outspeed them, and you can just keep stunning them over and over and over again. The benefit too about Star of the Deep Sea is Star of the Deep Sea as an artifact doesn't care about hitting or not. So you can Pirate Captain Fun into an evasion unit in order to stun them, because the bomb would still be applied as long as there's no immunity on the team. If there's no immunity, you can hit into a stealth, you can hit into a unit like Violet, or into a unit like Eden, even though it will activate their skill 2 passive, it will just instantly stun them right then and there, because the bomb would be applied and then activated instantly. Next up, we have Meteor Cowick. Meteor Cowick here is on a really high HP set, really high defense. He is on really slow speed. The speed here is actually a tech against Angel of Light Angelica, because the entire goal for here is to be slower than Angel of Light Angelica. And so Angel of Light Angelica cannot skill 3, or else Hand Guy would just cleanse all of it right off. So that's basically, it's like a reverse situation with Hand Guy and Angel of Light Angelica. That's the entire goal. Otherwise, you want him to be on pretty decent HP, pretty decent defense. You can build a bit of effectiveness into him. Effective resistance, you can probably also build effective resistance. You can play either a effectiveness hand guy, a effect resistant hand guy, or just a really bulky hand guy, which is what Koala chose. In the end, the best set for him is speed into HP set. His skill 3 already has a passive, where if this skill is available according to cooldown count, he decreases the debuff of himself by 1 turn. So basically, any type of stun that isn't 2 turns, or any type of silence that isn't 2 turns, he will instantly cleanse it off, allowing him to wake up with the turn, allowing him to allow him to skill 3, which dispels all the debuffs from all allies and granting an attack and immunity to everyone. So basically, there's a lot of hand guy to basically become this. He's like the Swiss Army knife of characters, of cleansers. He's basically really hard to control, and he can cleanse your entire team. because he cannot be controlled basically. Artifact wise, Warhorn is considered one of the better ones for him. It increases the attack of all allies, which is nice, but it also grants him a 16% CO push at the end of 3 enemy turns. This basically means that if you're playing against someone like C Liz and Conquer Liz happens to provoke Meteor Cowick and push him back, eventually he will just get the combat in this push and he will just basically negate that CO push. Basically he's not too slow. He will just still cut regardless of who went first or who did what. So even if he gets pushed back, he will still push forward and he'll still keep up the pressure with his skill 3 and skill 2. Next up, we have Urban Shadow Shu. So this Urban Shadow Shu is on a decent HP, probably decent defense. Her attack is really high for some reason. Her speed is 240. Usually this is actually considered pretty slow. You want like 250, 260. Her crit chance is good. Her crit damage is pretty good too. So this is really good crit damage. In terms of gimmick, she is an injury reliant character. So all her entire gimmick is that she's supposed to be this unit who just keeps injuring down your opponent. So she's a direct counter towards units like the Lost Rider Crow, Lila, Dark Corvus, and even APOC Ravi. But she's really strong. You want her to build her as fast as possible because you want her to take as many turns as possible. Because her injury is reliant on how many turns she can take in the turn. You want to play on speed HP set to bulk up her HP as much as possible. And her artifact of choice for this type of build is a Proof of Valor, because Proof of Valor decreases damage suffered by 30%. For this is the match Proof of Valor up to 15%. So the thing about Urban Shadow Shu here is that you want her to be really fast while also being really tanky. So this Urban Shadow Shu is innately really hard to be taken down, even by a specialty change Aiden, or even by units like LQC, even by Little Queen Charlotte, because she's so tanky. And then you play a unit like with mitigation, she can basically just stay in the field for basically forever. In addition to her gimmick, she's also really strong because her skill 3 grants increased speed to all enemies. And not all enemies. She gets increased speed to herself and all allies. So basically, the more speed you build on her, the faster she rotates. And the faster she rotates, the faster she can get the skill up. The faster she can get the skill up, the faster she can reset the speed and basically just outspeed your opponent from there. That's the entire gimmick. So that's why it's actually recommended playing her 250 or 260s. Next up, we have Shadow Knight Pilus. So Shadow Knight Pilus is she's had ridiculously high defense. She has ridiculously decent HP. Her speed is pretty slow, but this is a counter set. Her effectiveness is pretty bad. Her fight resistance is pretty okay too. In terms of build, she's on a defense with counter set. The entire idea for counter set is that since she has really high defense, it's actually easier to play with her with counter set, so she can get the strip, and she can do even more damage with the artifact of her choice, which we'll explain later. Defense set is because the artifact of her choice scaled off of defense, and so with a combination, she can counter with the extra defense, and she can deal pretty massive damage. Artifact of choice is Rocket Punch Gauntlet. So this is limited collab artifact for IE Karina. So after attacking, after attacking with a single attack, she has 80 to 100% chance to inflict additional damage to target, proportional to the caster's defense. So the entire gimmick is that since Shadow Knight Pilus, her talents allow her to reduce damage from counters and stuff like that, she can basically act as this secondary DPS against units like Naval Captain Lanny. So she can let's say Naval Captain Lanny hits her, she can counter into Naval Captain Lanny, hitting her, and then activating Rocket Punch Gauntlet. Since it activates Rocket Punch Gauntlet will probably do 5,000, 6,000 damage straight into her true damage. Then there's nothing that can really be done against it. So the entire idea for Shadow Knight Pillar is that she's basically a anti-Spirit Eye Celine counter. She's an anti Naval Captain Laney counter. Rocket Punch allows her to basically deal with any type of unit, and she alone, Shadow Knight Pillars, can actually be played around as just a DPS with this build. Because she has so high defense, she can basically touch someone, she can deal a massive amount of damage. That's an entire gimmick. Next up, Designer a little bit. So Designer a little bit here is a speed crit set on Durando, the best artifact here is probably not Durando. It would probably be much better if you had like Sigurd Scythe or you had something like Golden Rose. Her defense is 2000, her HP is 14.7k, her speed is pretty decent at 220 speed, her crit chance is 93.6%, to over 272% crit damage. So the entire gimmick for her is that for right now, with Durando, is that she cannot be pushed back. So if you push her back, it will push her forward, right? If you push her back with like 0 strategy, which is really common. So the entire gimmick is that she would speed crit. If your opponent has too many debuffs, she can her skill 2 activate cleansing herself, allowing her to get a defense buff. Her defense scaling skill 3 will do a pretty good amount of damage. It will decrease the debuff duration of all allies. It will increase the skill cooldown of all enemies, and it will also increase combat maintenance of everyone of your allies. This basically means that she can be used as an anti-cleaving unit. So she can take all the debuffs, and then once she gets a turn, she can cleanse all the debuffs up, grant your team a 50% CO push, giving them the chance to cut. And by giving them the chance to cut, it will allow them to basically destroy a cleave comp, because a cleave comp relies on being able to combo. But they cannot combo because they got like controlled or something like that. The game is over, and that's it. That's how design a little bit works. She's just anti control unit. She's really good into cleave because of a pretty decent amount of damage. So Corinne is a PvE unit. Bloodblade Corinne here is on a double resist set on a crit chance. She has really high attack. She has pretty decent HP. She has no speed. She's on base speed. 100% crit chance, 280% crit damage, and really high effect resistance, almost 200. So the entire gimmick for her is that she's also an anti-cleaver. If your opponent is a cleaver and they have no form of stripper at all, like they don't have any way to strip off of BBK's innate immunity innate immortality at the start of the turn, they have no way to deal with it. She will basically absorb all the damage, and her damage increases, and she gains more attack and more speed the lower her HP she has. So at 1 HP, she can deal insanely massive amount of damage, and she can basically be this type of unit to punish those people who play really slow, or not really slow. She can punish those people who play insanely fast with no strip. So she can just sit there and she can absorb the damage, and then eventually, once she gets a turn, she can skill 3, doing a massive amount of damage, wiping your entire enemy team for an easy win. Artifact-wise, the choice right now, the best is probably considered to be Host of the Banquet, because they grant effect resistance, which is pretty good. And since for Bloodblade Corinne, you're going to be attacking targets whose HP percent is already 50% or more anyways, your damage is going to get increased by a little bit, allowing her to basically punish those cleavers with no type of strip. The only weakness nowadays is that cleavers nowadays have a unit called Veronica, and Veronica auto strips immortality with that endures effect resistance. So the issue for her now is that it's really easy to take away her immortality, and while her immortality, she's pretty much useless. She's really easy to knock out. Next up, we have Apocalypse Ravi. This is the Apoc Ravi for a PvP. So her defense is 1.2k defense with 23,000 HP. Her speed is pretty decent at almost 180. Her crit chance and crit damage is absolutely insane at 100% crit chance and 300% crit damage. So she's on a counter pen set. Her entire gimmick is that she's this anchor. She's this dark anchor that basically allows your team to play like somewhat aggressively, and then play Apoc Ravi as like an anchor. So the entire idea is that even if your opponent somehow kills one of your allies, Apoc Ravi can do a skill 3, and the skill 3, if it kills, will revive said unit, giving them a full turn at 100% CO push, allowing them to basically play around the entire team, or allowing them to basically just come back from the dead and do something. That's her entire power. In addition to that, her skill 1 has injury. She has really high damage. Anytime she gets hit, she actually CO pushes herself, and she heals a bit, and given that she has fighting spirit. So the entire gimmick here is that if you play her on counter set with pen set, she will do insanely massive damage, and eventually whenever she gets hit, she will counter. She'll grant herself some fighting spirit because she countered, and she will basically make your opponent, be really sticky and really hard to knock out in a straight fight. because she injures your opponent. She counters, she deals massive amount of damage, and she will eventually kill your team in the right circumstances. And she can even revive. She has really strong situational revive, which allows her to be really annoying, allows her to basically punish anyone at any moment. Artifact of choice is some Sora Prayer Beads. Since Sora Prayer Beads, since she only has single target skills, increases in damage dealt is pretty nice. And decreasing damage dealt by single attack is also pretty nice, since for Apex Ravi, usually the things that kill her are single target skills. Usually AoEs are not going to kill her because she has the CO pushing and the healing. So this allows her to be a little bit more sticky than usual, allows her to do a bit more damage, and overall it's better than playing Proof of Valor. Since Apex Ravi has been kind of falling off in the meta recently due to the fact that she doesn't really provide as much as other cleavers, or she kind of get countered by other units like Naval Captain Lady or by Abyssal Yufin. Next up, we have Inferno Kawazu. This Inferno Kawazu build is on really high attack. You don't need crit on him. He has decent bulk with 1.5k defense, with 14k HP. He has decent speed at 200 and decent effectiveness at 36, but even though defensive doesn't really matter. He's on a speed defense set. The defense set is here because he already has pretty high defense, and you want him to be pretty tanky overall. So the defense set is nice, just you make sure he doesn't just die. His EE of choice is his CO2 grants himself immunity. This is really nice because it means his skill 2, whenever his skill 2 activates, because he suffers a AoE attack, he grants himself a CO push, he grants himself vigor, and he grants himself an attack, and he grants himself a immunity buff. The immunity buff basically makes him allows him to be uncontrollable for any character who can't strip the buff out directly, allowing him to basically take the next turn, or basically allow him to basically be unstoppable until he takes his next turn. His artifact of choice here is Benimo's Tachi. So Benimo Tachi grants himself immunity at the start of the battle, which is nice because it means he can't be controlled at the initial start. And if he doesn't have a debuff, since his skill 2 already cleanses all debuffs anyways, when he takes a turn, he has a chance to get another attack buff, which basically boosts his attack. The entire thing about why you want the attack buff on him is because his skill 3 is all about burns. So all he does is that he hits a unit, he applies like 2 burns, and he detonates the burns instantly, granting damage. And if the unit if Inferno Kawazu has vigor, he ignores effect resistance, and he will burn for even more damage. So burn is proportional to his attack. So the more attack and with vigor and attack buff, he can basically almost nuke any target in the game. So he can basically skill 3 into someone like Senya, he can skill 3 into someone like Abyssal Yufin, or even though Abyssal Yufin is kind of risky, he can skill 3 into someone like Naval Captain Lanny, especially Naval Captain Lanny. He can skill 3, apply 2 burns to Naval Captain Lanny, and instantly pop her. Just like that. Next up, we have Abyssal Yufin. So Abyssal Yufin is on lifesteal crit set. You need her to have at least 2,000 defense. This is mandatory. Her defense needs to be at least 2,000. Her HP, you want to try to build on as much HP as you can into her. Her speed, you cannot have her base speed, but you need her to be kind of decently fast. Because without being decently fast, she's pretty just slow. She just sits there and deals nothing. Her crit chance is 100%. You want 100% crit chance, and her crit damage, you want it pretty good, as much crit damage as possible. Being on crit set, lifesteal set is pretty much mandatory, so best in slot. Her entire gimmick is that Abyssal Yufin is a time bomb of sorts. So when she skill 1, she gives herself 20 fighting spirit. When she gets hit, she gives herself 20 fighting spirit, and not anything related to that. When she has 100% fighting spirit and this skill is off cooldown, she will inflict trauma on herself, and she will skill 3, dispelling all buffs, ignoring effect resistance, and decreasing combat readiness. So the entire gimmick is that her S2 here, when she has 100% fighting spirit, she will always dispel all defense from the caster, allowing her to skill 3, and then the skill 3 transforms to skill 1, which allows you to do really massive single target damage. So with this build, the entire idea is to play her on Albert's Ritual Sword, to be this unit who can both chip down your opponent and also be a ticking time bomb. So the entire idea is that if you touch her, right? She already had the 30% innate counter chance, so she gains the 20%. She gains 20 fighting spirit because she got touched, because she got hit, and then if she counters, she gets an extra 20% fighting spirit because she countered, because the S1 gives 20 fighting spirit. So the entire idea is that you play her with something like Crimson Omen, and you basically sit down and you wait for your opponent to eventually proc enough Elbrises to activate her skill 3, or you wait long enough and she will eventually chip your opponent. Or if in the best case scenario, she will counter so many times to the point where she will literally just kill your opponent in the cleave comp, or she will literally just outright wipe your opponent. In terms of set, you want lifesteal set of basically it sustains her long enough, so anytime even though she gets hit, she can lifesteal all of it back with her AoE hit, and then in the end she can basically just overrun your opponent because she's basically impossible to take out. That's the entire gimmick. And then last but not least, Lone Crescent Bellona. So Lone Crescent Bellona here is a 3.1k, which is pretty low. You want 3.5. She had 1.3k defense and 1.18k HP, which is insanely high. 18k is ridiculously high for her. Her speed is 175, which is decent. Her she doesn't need crit chance. She always crits, and her crit damage is almost perfect, almost 350. So on playing Destro with Penset, so her entire gimmick here is that since she is this character who will always crit on all her skills if she hits, you want to play her on this. You can play her on lifesteal, you can play her on counter, or you can play her on Destro. So Koala plays Destro with Penset. So Destro with Penset allows her to basically skill 1 and skill 3, and it will deal massive damage, allowing her to basically ignore anti-crit. So the entire thing is that she can play really well into something like Naval Captain Landy. She can play really well into something like Shu. She can play really well into something like Dean, because she always crit. So the entire idea is that if you can play her with some support, so some type of tank down stat with Penset, you can basically slowly and surely whittle down your opponent with Lone Crescent Bellona CO2, which is an AoE counter, AoE extra attack. Her skill 1, which deals a massive amount of damage, especially when soulburned, and her skill 3, which grants herself vigor and deals a pretty good amount of damage if she's fully stat. Artifact wise, since Lone Crescent Bellona has no innate healing, the best artifact choice is Sigurd's Scythe. As an attack scaler, since she's usually always going to be below 50% HP, because she's usually going to be the one who gets hit almost all the time, and he's going to be probably the one who's going to get attacked. You want to increase her attack by a lot more, and you want to, after attacking, you also want to heal off of that. So basically the entire idea is that even though most of the time Lone Crescent as a bruiser will probably be below 50% HP, if below 50% HP, she gets more attack. If she gets the S2, if she gets the skill 2 after while having Sigurd active, she can basically AoE doing a massive amount of damage to everyone, and with the massive amount of damage, she can basically heal all of her HP back up with Sigurd's Scythe, and she can basically rinse and repeat the cycle on and on and on until she basically overruns your opponent with the amount of damage she can do, or your opponent really can't deal with her. So Lone Crescent is really good into something like Naval Captain Laney, because Naval Captain Laney has innate crit chance, and innate crit chance doesn't work against a unit, it can always crit. She's really good against units like Shu, because she can always crit. She's really good against units like Senya. Lone Crescent Bellona is pretty much like the best aggressive bruiser of them all, because she actually has everything you need to basically survive. The only trick about her is that she has really, really awful building. It's really hard to build her, because you want to try not to get any crit chance, and you want to build attack, defense, HP, speed, and crit damage. So overall, it's a pretty hard build to build her, but it's doable and it's possible, and she's pretty strong into a lot of these units. Otherwise, for her, you have to be really careful about picks like Moana, because Moana can basically screw her over, because if she doesn't really do damage in the end, she doesn't really do anything. So it's kind of like a trade-off overall. Otherwise, that is a good introduction. It's 2 hours, and if anyone need any extra help, you can contact me. And then, like I said before, please If you want to join Kotetsu, please try to contact me. We're looking for members of any type. And then if you need any help, you can comment down the video, and then Koala would usually respond if they see it. Otherwise, thank you, and have a nice day.